Me again. All right, so last week on Friday, y'all had to read passages from Uncle Tom's Cabin, a book that was written in 1852 by an abolitionist by the name of Harriet Beecher Stowe, right? At the time of its publication, it was the second best-selling book of the entire 19th century, second only to the Bible itself, right? So this was a very popular book, and what it did is it popularized certain stereotypes about slaves, and it emphasized the suffering that slaves felt every single day because Uncle Tom was a slave, right? So it made people aware of the cruelty that was happening on plantations in the South and how awful slavery was, and it kind of brought to national attention why slavery should be abolished. Not like people were already questioning it, because a lot of people were already like, dude, this needs to go. But the main thing I want to focus on with this, because you already read the passages, it popularizes stereotypes about slaves. And you will see this in your worksheet for the week. This is when we get pickaninnies, all right? Or the mammy character, or Uncle Tom. All of these are racial slurs, technically. All right. Being called an Uncle Tom is offensive. Being called a pickaninny, being referred to as mammy. Francisco, remember when you referred to me as that? Yeah, come on, man. These are not good stereotypes, right? Stereotypes usually aren't good. They kind of emphasize the negativity of a certain person, a certain group, a certain culture, whatever. So pictured here on this slide are the stereotypes that Uncle Tom's Cabin kind of emphasized. The mammy character, pictured here on the left, right, is a bigger, nurturing Black woman, right? She was kind of the head honcho of the slaves. You will see a major depiction of this in movies like Gone with the Wind, if you've ever seen that. If not, I highly recommend it. The woman who played Mammy in Gone with the Wind was the first African American to win an Oscar. But I digress from that. The character in the middle is the pickaninny, right? So this book kind of emphasized that, like, slave children looked like this: unkempt hair, raggedy clothes. They looked kind of confused, kind of dumb, if you will. And again, this book emphasized this. And then, of course, Uncle Tom is pictured on the right. Again, raggedy clothes, kind of blank expression. And remember, the author of this book was an abolitionist. She wasn't doing this because she was racist. She was doing this to, again, shed light on how certain people, especially in the South, viewed African Americans at this time. Right? So again, it was to educate the population that this is what people think of when they see slaves, when they see slave women, slave children, slave men, right? This is a problem. They're people. It doesn't matter what your skin color is. We're all human, right? And that was kind of her goal on shedding light on these pickaninnies, despite their racist connotations there. All right, moving on. We got the Kansas-Nebraska Act. I won't spend too much time on this. This is over popular sovereignty, right? Two states most people forget about. Yeah, it's a thing. Oh, look, there's a picture. Bleeding Kansas. A lot of people think this is the cause of the Civil War, the main start of the Civil War. Again, I will let you all read on this because I don't really talking about it, because we got the Dred Scott decision. I'm going to spend some time talking to y'all about this real quick, and then I'll end this video. Dred Scott was a slave, all right? He was a slave who sued for his freedom in 1857, all right? The Supreme Court case was known as Dred Scott versus Sanford. If you actually feel like looking it up, I kind of highly recommend it. It's very interesting. Dred Scott was originally from Missouri, but then he moved to a free territory with a slave owner. All right, so like he was born into slavery, and then a slave owner moved his family to a free state, but still had Dred Scott as a slave. Okay, so Dred Scott, the slave, claimed that he should be free because he's now living in free territory where slavery is abolished. It's illegal. The Supreme Court, though, ruled that, nope, you're not a real person. You're a slave. So this is considered to be the absolute worst decision made by the Supreme Court ever in the history of the Supreme Court's existence, which, by the way, has been around since the very, 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 very early 1800s. Okay? Ever. In the history of ever. More controversial than Plessy versus Ferguson, Roe v. Wade, right? Super controversial because, again, the Supreme Court had the audacity to look at this man who was educated enough to know that he could sue for his rights. The Constitution protects people like that. But the Supreme Court came back in and said, you don't have the right to quote the US Constitution because you're not a real person. Therefore, you don't have the right to sue anybody over anything ever. Obviously, that's super controversial, right? And abolitionists all over the country went crazy over this. And they started this saying, once free, always free. I'll let you guys view this video. All right, it's pretty interesting, but this is a phrase that came around with the Dred Scott case. Once you're in a free territory, you're free forever. That's it. You made it to free land. You are a free man. And that was kind of the phrase that was going around with abolitionists and Dred Scott at this time. Dred Scott eventually did win his freedom, by the way. Years later, him and his family. He ended up getting free himself and then ended up buying back his family. We'll talk about that later, but that is a Dred Scott decision, and it is, again, considered to be the worst decision in Supreme Court history for obvious reasons. Bear with me, I got one more video coming at you guys next.